All right, this is the DeFi Podcast, the first podcast on decentralized finance. I'm your host, Karim Sabba, and together we'll delve into the decentralized finance ecosystem, or DeFi for short. DeFi is actually one of the most exciting developments within the blockchain space. Up until now, the traditional financial system has created enormous amounts of wealth for the happy few who had access to the resources and knowledge necessary to be at the big boys table. But since the boom of blockchain, countless projects have emerged to try and rebalance the global access to basic financial services, such as transferring value, lending, or insurance. Now, DeFi has flourished to include stablecoins, decentralized exchanges, marketplaces, new investment products. The list goes on and on. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Alex Mashinsky, the CEO of Celsius Network. Hi, Alex. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Of course, it's a pleasure. So, Alex, you have quite the background. You were born in communist Ukraine. You grew up in socialist Israel, and then you thrived, I guess, in capitalist America. Could you give us the highlights of your path as an entrepreneur?
Sure. Like you said, I tried the three systems, right? Communism, socialism, capitalism. And I view decentralization as a fourth system. If you think of it from, it's like decentralized Buddhism, right? So the opportunity we have is to really reinvent these three experiments with the three previous systems, because even capitalism worked very well for me. I started 8 different companies and had $3 billion in exits, built 2 unicorns, but it does not work for 90% of Americans. It does not work for over 7 billion people on this planet, because the wealth concentration today is the highest it's ever been in the history of mankind. So I think we are looking at decentralization as a way to value our contribution to society versus our ability to generate profit, which is what capitalism is.
Got it. And so you were at the Paris Blockchain Week with us last April, and you gave a presentation called From VoIP to MoIP. And so today I'd like to talk a little bit about both. Okay, so let's start with VoIP. So VoIP is voice over IP. And so at that time, you figured that VoIP could be the end of incumbent telco operator, and then you set out to bring down the big telco operators. One might say that.
So let me just correct you for a second. I did not set out to bring down France Telecom or AT&T or any of these things. I set out to solve the problem that all these companies, because they were monopolies, were charging their customers, charging all of us $3 a minute to call overseas. And I basically said, well, what if we put these phone calls on the internet and gave them for free to everybody? So my mission was not to take down the phone companies. My mission was to find a technical way to bypass the monopolies. And we replaced toll collectors like the phone companies with free service, which is voice over IP. I invented voice over IP. I built the first few gateways. And then through a company I started called Arbinet, which was listed on NASDAQ and ran about 10% of all the traffic in the world. And we brought VoIP to what now is 4.5 billion people use voice over IP, right? So we're trying to do the same thing with money over IP, right? MoIP. And we're basically saying, look, the banks are the toll collectors. Instead of charging us $3 a minute, they don't pay us anything for our money. We give them our money for free. And let's replace that with a service that acts in our best interest, like DeFi, that will pay us a fair value for our hard-earned money.
You got it. And so do you see any parallels between what happened with when VoIP got known and seen as a challenger to telco operators, and now what you're doing with Celsius and the banks providing deposit bank accounts?
Yeah, so I see a big parallel. A lot of people are skeptical about it, but when I see what's happening with all the financial institutions and the Federal Reserve and all the central banks and everything else, of how basically they are manipulating fiat currencies and what we earn and rates and things like that as basically the same movie, seeing it the second time, right? Because we all of these things are not acting in the best interest of the citizens. And the job of governments is to do what's best for its citizens. But in these cases, banks and financial institutions are so powerful and so centralized that they have managed to convince governments and central banks to do what they need versus what billions of people need. So what I'm trying to do with Celsius Network is exactly what I did with Arbinet, and that is to create an alternative. We're not trying to bring down the banks, even though banks are not your friends, and you should not be thinking that any banker or any banking institution is in any way acting in your best interest. But what we're trying to create is an alternative. And when you have an alternative, then customers or users or individuals can choose. Do I give when I earn my money, do I give it to the bank and earn nothing? Or do I give it to a different service where they earn a return for me? And it's not just that I go to work every day and I work hard, but also my money work hard for me as well. Because that's what we're missing. We're missing the ability of people to see a future, to see an opportunity, to see a light at the end of the tunnel, right? I mean, if you take JP Morgan as an example, they have about, I think, 14 or 15 trillion in assets. They don't pay interest on half of it. So half of all the money they have, people gave them, and they get nothing for it. In Germany, in Japan, and other countries in Europe, negative rates, $15 trillion worth of negative rates. I mean, people agreed to pay the bank money to put the money in the bank. So these are just crazy, crazy times. And all of us take it for granted, just like we used to take for granted that using a phone or talking to someone and paying $3 a minute was a reasonable proposition.
Got it. And so I did like the point you made about providing an alternative. That's very much the whole idea behind DeFi and the whole DeFi ecosystem. And so basically it comes down to a question of trust. Like Leonard Schrank, the ex-CEO of Swift protocol, likes to say, we don't like banks, but we trust them. So he may be right, he may be wrong, but my point is, how are we going to get hundreds of millions of people to trust computer code instead of a known entity such as a bank?
So let's go back 700 years and think about how this whole thing with banks started. So Banco de Pace in Siena was one of the first banks that came up with the genius idea that you can bring your gold coins in, and the bank manager will write on a piece of paper, hey, 5 gold coins. And then that piece of paper, anytime you come back to the bank, would give you back those coins. And then people said, well, I don't have to go back to the bank. I can just give that piece of paper to somebody else. And that's how the note was created. The first note, a bank note, right, was created because of that. And all the notes used to be backed by gold. And then slowly, some of the notes became just notes, and they were not backed by gold. And now most of the notes are not backed by gold. They're not backed by anything. So when we say we trust the banks, and the banks, what they've done over time is removed all of the trust. They removed all of the assets that we used to be behind these things. Deutsche Bank has over 50-to-1 leverage, meaning for every dollar that somebody deposits, they lent out $50 to all kind of crazy people for derivatives and all kind of crazy financial instruments. That is extremely risky situation for the depositor, right? But most people don't understand that. Most people think that the bank is safe and the bank is a great place to hold your money. So the beauty of the DeFi network movement and what Celsius is doing and other people are doing is that the only way the blockchain works is when you deposit an asset, you can borrow another asset. It's 100% or sometimes up to 200% backed by assets, right? So we're going back to the original notion that behind the node, or behind, in this case, the smart contract, there's always an asset. Now, the asset is also digital currency, but we know that every one of those digital currencies was bought or mined with actual investment, right? With actual value. So it's not that you can compare the two and say, well, DeFi is just like the banks. DeFi is 100 times better than any bank. It's completely transparent. It can be audited by anyone. Try that with your bank. Try to walk to your bank, make a deposit, and say, hey, I want to know what you're doing with my money. I want to know who you're lending it to. I want to know under what terms. I want to know when you're going to give it back to me. I want to know what the leverage is, right? They'll laugh at you, right? So here, by having full transparency, by being able to read the code and verify everything, and all of that stuff is fully transparent, fully available to everyone. And that's one of the examples. That's why Celsius Networks decided to be a fully transparent organization, right? Because we are celebrating transparency, not hiding behind it. So I think the opportunity is to create the first fully transparent financial institution, right? And DeFi is just a component of that, because most people, again, 7.2 billion people on this planet probably couldn't even read the code, right? Even if you gave it to them. So we need to create the trust, a trusted institution that is relying on these transparent systems to deliver the service.
Got it. So yeah, let's talk about Celsius Network. So for the people who might not know already, Celsius Network is a lending and borrowing platform. People can download an app. They can either deposit digital asset, crypto, and earn interest, or ask for a loan that's collateralized with digital assets. I'm guessing the answer to my next question, but what did you have in mind when designing the product? What was your priority?
Yeah, so 90% of our business is earning interest for depositors. 10% of our business is issuing loans, right? So if you think of a traditional platform like a Lending Club or any other platform, right, peer-to-peer, you would see that there are hedge funds that are the lenders, and there are retail or individuals who are the borrowers. Here, it's exactly the opposite of that. Here, the depositors or the lenders are the individuals, right? We have over 120,000 individuals who give us their coins, and the borrower are 140 different institutions who are the borrowers. So we created a business that is almost the opposite of any other peer-to-peer platform that existed before. So why? Because our job is to represent the depositor. We're not a neutral marketplace where we are helping both sides do what they need to do. A lot of other people do that. Most DeFi companies are neutral marketplaces. We are here only representing the depositors. We are always acting in the best interest of the depositors as a group. And we then represent all their interests to the counterparty, which is the borrower. So again, which is the opposite of what banks do, right? So, and that's the new business model. That is something that I don't think anyone else has created until now. So that is what's special and unique about Celsius, and that's why Celsius is growing so fast, is because we really invented a new way of doing things.
Can you, I did see a few articles in my newsfeed about Celsius performance and so on. What numbers can you share with us about the Celsius growth?
Sure. So I've done 8 startups before this. Like I said, I had built 2 unicorns. And I built a company, Groundlink, that was Uber before Uber. I built the wireless in the subways. I invented voice over IP. I built a company that was worth $1.4 billion on the NASDAQ. So, ran a public company, Novotel Wireless, with 1,500 employees. So I have a lot of experience in value creation and in both public markets, private markets. And I can tell you, I've never seen growth like this, right? So in less than a year, Celsius did $2.5 billion in loans, right? So unheard of in less than 1 year. We now have deposits of over $400 million. So in 1 year, people trusted us with $400 million worth of stable coins, crypto assets like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and staking assets, right? Like DAI and others. So the growth is because these new vehicles, these new financial instruments, are increasing the velocity of money. They don't run 5 days a week during banking hours, right? They run 7, 24, 365. The fungibility on these assets is dramatically higher than bank wires or ACH or any other instrument. So when you put all these things together, and the fact that there was so much friction out there with existing financial institutions, you're really unlocking untapped demand that really is replacing the traditional rails with decentralized blockchain-based rails, just like we replaced the phone network, which was a TDM network, with a TCP/IP or UDP-based connectivity, right? So when you switch rails, you can suddenly run 10 times faster or cheaper, and that's what's happening here. And that's why this phenomenal growth that we're experiencing is something that is just the beginning, right? So layer on top of that the fact that we give back to our depositors 80% of what we make. So if we earn 10% on a stable coin, we give back 8%, and that's what we pay right now. We pay 8% on USDC or TUSD or PAX or GUSD or any of the other ones, right? So you can give your money to a bank and earn less than 1% in the United States or negative rates in Europe, or you can take the same dollar, buy a stable coin with it. There's still a dollar in a bank, but now the stable coin can be deposited in a wallet like Celsius and earn 8% per year, right? 8 times more than what the bank pays.
Got it. Yeah, of course, that's interesting. And so what it's fascinating, like the fact that you and some others are launching this service and that it's like right off the bat much better than what any financial institution could offer. But what's the end game? What's the next step for you? I mean,
so look, our mission, and we stated that in 2017 when we started Celsius, and we did an ICO in March of 2018 and so on, but you can see the original white paper. I mean, you'll see that we didn't pivot. Our mission from day one was to bring 100 million people into crypto, to basically educate people about these new rails and make it as easy as possible for them to join the revolution, right? Join decentralization. Because decentralization is really fighting a war with centralization, right? You show me a very successful company, I will show you a centralized toll collector, right? And so that is one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is decentralized companies that are here to disrupt all of that and bring power back to the people and enable people to earn most of the rewards. Like I said, we're giving 80% back to the depositors. Do you know any bank that pays 80% of what they make to the depositors? JP Morgan last year made $30 billion in profit. All of it, almost all of it, went to their shareholders as either dividends or stock buybacks or bonuses to the executives, right? So banks are very good at extracting profits, but most of the profits go not to the depositor, but to the shareholders, right? And that's what most companies do. That's their job, right? So we can be mad at banks or other companies, but that's their job. So who is out there building value or returning value back to the depositor? No one, right? You show me one company or one organization that does that. So what we created is really something that should be obvious, but no one has done it, right? It's like plucking a chicken one feather at a time. Over 700 years, we got so used to this notion that what banks do is just the way it's going to be like that forever, that no one is really coming up with anything new or innovative. And look at fintech, right? 30 years of fintech. You show me one company in fintech that actually disrupted the banks or disrupted the financial model, right? So that's what we're trying to do here. Celsius, from day one, said, hey, this new set of rails, the blockchain, is our opportunity to create a new and innovative development, right? New and innovative way. And we're not going to make it a little bit incremental. We're not going to build a PayPal or a Venmo, which is just a little bit better than what the banks does, right? We're going to build a whole new revolution that will enable us to really build something new from scratch, right? And something that is acting in the best interest of the community.
Okay, got it. And so I guess sometime after you did launch, and maybe at the time you did launch, I mean, we've seen a few projects similar to Celsius emerge over the last year. So there's a few that are known and a bit famous. So there's yours, of course, but there's Salt Landing, BlockFi, Compound. How, aside from the payout and the rates, how can you provide a service that is different, and how do you see the competition in this field playing over the next few years? Who's going to the whole pie?
Sure. So first, let me correct you. All these companies are definitely not in the same bucket, because Celsius invented the business of paying interest. Okay, before Celsius paid interest, no one paid interest. BlockFi didn't pay any interest. Sol didn't pay any interest. Nexo didn't pay any interest, right? None of these companies, no exchange in the world paid you interest on your deposit, right? So Celsius came and said, wait a second, we can take Bitcoin and pay interest. So we invented that business. Now, at the same time that we invented this business, all these other companies you're talking about charged you 18 to 24% to borrow money against your assets. And Celsius came and said, no, that's not fair. If it's an asset-backed loan, it should be 5 to 9%. That's what the market is. If you take your home and you go to the bank and you say, here's my home, give me a loan, you will pay 5%. So why are we charging 25% for that? Just because we can doesn't mean we have to. So Celsius came and disrupted the lending business by saying, if you have a digital asset, we're going to treat it just like a home, and we're going to charge you just like a home. And we cut the rates by basically 80%, 70 to 80%. We still are the cheapest guys out there, right? Nexo and Salt and all these guys you're talking about still charge you 12 to 18% right now. So I would definitely not put Celsius in the same bucket as all these other guys, all right? So we are acting in the best interest of our depositors. None of these other companies can tell you, look you in the eye and say, we are acting in the best interest of you or anyone else. Their job is to generate profit. And it's like the difference between WhatsApp and the phone company, right? Is there any phone company that you can say, wow, they're really acting in my best interest? But at the same time, if you look at WhatsApp, they're acting in your best interest. They're doing everything for you for free, right? So this is the difference. The difference, most people get so used to the fact that no one is to be trusted. No one is acting in their best interest, and they're not expecting that from anyone. You understand? But what Celsius is saying, no, we can do good and do well at the same time. WhatsApp got sold for $22 billion. They never charged the customers any fees. Celsius never charged its customers any fees. We have to earn a return, and then we keep 20% of it. 80% every week goes back to the depositors. So it's a different business model. You understand? It's not the same. What do BlockFi and Nexo and Salt and all these other guys, what do? They charge fees. All the money comes from charge fees. They don't generate anything. You understand? So I understand why a lot of people put us in the same bucket and they call it the lending business. But like I said, 90% of our business is earning interest income. And that's why no one else can catch up with Celsius. The reason Celsius, I don't know if you saw the article in CoinDesk that came out on Saturday, just a few days ago. Celsius is twice as big as all the other DeFi guys put together, right? That's the statistics. So you take all the other guys, all the lending that they've done, all the transactions that they've done, and Celsius is twice as big as all those guys put together. Why? Because we are giving so much back to the community. We're giving almost everything back to the depositor.
Got it. And so, do you think it's just all about the platform who gives the best return.
Yes, it's that simple. Why do people use Amazon? Why do people use Costco? Because they give the most back to their customers, right? It's that simple. Just because you can charge somebody 24% to borrow against their Bitcoin, doesn't mean you have to.
Got it. Okay. And so I guess you are a bit. You don't look with a very good eye on the new guys launching right now lending platforms. So, for instance, Binance announced
No,
they will
I don't. Look,
What's your
let me phrase this differently, right? 99.99% of all the assets in the world are still sitting inside banks. They're not in the DeFi or BlockFi or a Celsius or any other platform, right? So the competition is not between us and BlockFi, right? Not us and Nexo. We are everybody in this little industry is still doing good compared to the banks, right? All of us are trying to steal assets, as many assets as possible from the banks. That is the war. The battle is against the banks, not against each other. But I'm saying, if you want to be successful, imagine if I created Voice of IP and instead of giving it for free, I started charging $2.50 a minute. Instead of $3 a minute, I charge $2.50. That's the equivalent, right? So if you borrow on your credit card, they charge you 25%. And what Salt or Nexo did is they said, good, 25. How about 24% from Nexo or Salt? You understand? That's what they did. They charge you $2.50 per minute on the phone call. So that is not how you bring the world to a new technology. So, like I said, 4.5 billion people use Voice of IP. How did that happen? Why do we have a problem with adoption for the blockchain? Bitcoin is 11 years old. Only 50 million people own it, right? Or have wallets. So why is it such a small number? When the internet was 11 years old, we already had hundreds of millions of people using it, right? Because it provided a much better utility, right? So the issue here is that we need to, like I always say, it's not. We need to create a service that is so easy and is so attractive that people will switch. Because with money, the bar is much higher. With MOIP, the bar is much higher than it is with VoIP, right? Because with MOIP, you have to convince people to trust you with their money. To trust you with a phone call, of course, everybody can try it and nothing happens. Worst case, it doesn't work, right? So that is really the challenge here. And the decentralization, which uses the blockchain, has not really used it in an effective way. We do not have a killer app or a killer dApp that allows us to get to that mass adoption. And what Celsius is saying, the killer dApp is interest income. It's not the other 2,500 companies trying to build a faster blockchain or cheaper loans or all this other stuff. We think that the killer dApp that will bring several billion people into the blockchain and into decentralization is interest income. It's that simple. And it's confusing because most people think that we are in a lending business. But really, we're in an interest income business.
Interesting. And so, in the interest of bringing as many people as we can into this world, do you think that digital currencies issued by governments, like China announced they may consider launching a digital currency as well, would this help? Would this start a new kind of trade war on digital currencies? What's your take on this?
Right. So digital currencies are a great way to use the blockchain to transact really fast, around the clock, bypassing all of these rails like SWIFT or IBAN or all the other things we just talked about, right? But they don't solve the problem that they are really pegged to fiat currencies. And what does it mean, fiat currency? Most people don't even know what that means. Fiat currency means there is no gold in the bank behind a piece of paper that you own. Okay? If you instead of calling it fiat currency, you called it no gold, then no one would touch it. Everybody would be like, oh my God, what do you mean no gold? There's nothing behind it? Yes, there's nothing behind it. The only thing behind the US dollar is $125 trillion worth of debt, right? About 23 trillion in actual debt, and the rest of the debt is all liabilities for Medicare, Medicaid, and all kind of other things, student debt and all kind of other stuff. So how can you take a dollar, behind every dollar there's over $100 worth of debt. So anyone in their right mind would never use a dollar. But the reason the dollar is still the reserve currency of the planet, or the main fiat currency, the main currency that has no gold behind it whatsoever, is that the United States can tax all of the richest companies in the world, right? And from the taxes, it could, in theory, pay all of its bills. That is the theory, is that we can continue printing as many dollars as we can because we can tax our way to success in the future. So that is a very bad business model. And so it's very important that people understand that not to confuse DeFi or Bitcoin or Ethereum or any of the other independent, decentralized, blockchain-based coins with stable coins backed by this or that fiat currency. So I'm a big fan of fiat currencies. I'm a big fan of stable coins just for the utility and for their ability as a stepping stone to bring hundreds of millions of users into the blockchain. So I think before you can eat a Bitcoin, you should try a stable coin, right? That is my view. But they are not the solution. They're not, because when there's a disaster with this or that fiat currency, there's also going to be a disaster with this or that stable coin that is pegged to those currencies. So, and we have to be ready for it as a community, right? The crypto community, the blockchain community has to understand that sooner or later, these things are going to blow up. And when they're going to blow up, it's going to hurt the credibility of the entire blockchain industry, not just of that specific stablecoin.
Okay, interesting. Thank you so much. That was my last question. So guys, if you want to know more about what Alex is doing, go to Celsius.network, follow him on Twitter or LinkedIn. He's pretty active. Alex, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, look, it's not about me or Celsius or the small community of crypto community that we are part of. This is about, for me, the future of humanity. We are focused on continuing. Look, I'm part of the 1%. I'm not saying this like, oh, I hate the 1%. They are stealing everything from everybody. I'm part of the 1%, but I remember where I came from. I came with nothing. I was an immigrant that got kicked out of Russia, came to Israel, right? Worked really, really hard over there, couldn't get anywhere, and then got lucky and came to the United States and made it out pretty good. But again, 99% of the people don't have these opportunities. And it's our job, going back to this decentralized Buddhism, it's our job to think of everybody else and to think, how do we give back more? How do we give back 80% of what we make, for example, right? And it's on all of us. Every one of your listener has to ask himself, do I continue supporting the banks and giving them my money, or do I support this new movement that not just acts in my best interest, but also gives an opportunity for a better place, a better world, and a better future for our children and everybody else?
All right, I do like this. I think that will be the title of the podcast, actually. So thank you so much, Alex. That's it for today. If you like the show, go to DeFiPodcast.com for more episode and content on the decentralized finance ecosystem. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.